We're at all-time lows on unemployment. So talent is in short supply. Good talent is in short supply.
15 years ago, in the early 2000s, the 90s, if you can think back that far, there wasn't LinkedIn, there wasn't the internet. It was the Stone Age. None of that was the case. Today, everything's blown up, as you probably know, into a place where you're almost less than 6 steps of separation from people via LinkedIn.
Welcome to the Inside Forbes Councils podcast. Each episode shares transformative insights and advice from members of Forbes Councils, a group of invitation-only communities for successful executives and entrepreneurs. Today, we'll hear from 2 Forbes Councils members, both of whom are named John O'Connor and John Hittler. The Johns will speak from different sides of the hiring process and will share their best tips for job seekers and hiring managers. Everyone in the workforce has experienced the job search. Many of us probably have experienced the difficulties of interviewing for a job. Sometimes getting the interview is a challenge. It can be frustrating, and often job seekers will look to recruiters for help. But is that the best course of action?
Today, I want to talk a little bit about the perception of recruiters by candidates, how people sometimes perceive recruiters or ask questions. So let me give you a fresh, hot off the press example of this.
That's John O'Connor of Career Pro Incorporated.
I had a potential client come in today, an individual client. We also work with companies on outplacement. Came in today, and one of his questions was, well, how do I get a recruiter? And I think that was an interesting question. How do I get a recruiter? The implication was a recruiter, I think in years past, not so much today, and he's a 6-figure guy, engineering background, management, etc. Get a recruiter. I think his perception was, can you help me get a recruiter or people who do recruiting to help me with my search, to help me get noticed, to submit my resume, for me to get to know them a little bit and assist them. So let me break that down or unpack that a little bit. I think, let's say 15 years ago, in the early 2000s, the 90s, if you can think back that far, there wasn't LinkedIn, there wasn't the internet. It was the Stone Age. I mean, the internet wasn't used as much in searches and so on. LinkedIn, Indeed, ZipRecruiter, all these places you can get resumes or download resumes. If you're a company, if you're a person, you can upload your documents, you can network with people online. None of that was the case. Today, everything's blown up, as you probably know, into a place where you're almost less than 6 steps of separation from people via LinkedIn and through your connections there and on other places. But to get a recruiter in days past kind of meant you had an advocate. You had someone who's going to vouch for you.
So do you think today, with the opportunities for social networking available to the average person, that there is still a need for recruiters?
The headhunter idea was that this person would go find or help you find that job. And some recruiters do that. They're advocates for you. They assist you. They become your best friend. But one of the things people need to know when they're trying to get a recruiter is that might really limit your search. You definitely want to have good relationships with staffing personnel, with recruiters, with so-called headhunters. But let's unpack this even more. Recruiters could be, as this person who came into my office talked about, someone at a company who's a recruiter for, let's say, IBM Corporation. They serve on the recruiting team for engineers at IBM. Well, that person could be a conduit to the jobs that you're looking for at IBM, but you could also be referring to a recruiter who works in permanent or contract placement at a staffing company. You could be, when you say, I need a recruiter, I want to get a recruiter, you could be thinking about someone who maybe is out of their home, who's an independent recruiter, who's paid, per placement by a company, who isn't necessarily attached to the big staffing firms like, let's say, Kelly or Robert Half or Vaco or all these other companies that do staffing, Express, think of the national organizations that you might hear on the radio or hear regionally that do staffing. So it's a complicated question. But I think that if the person who came into my office was really thinking, I think, a little bit more open-minded, he would be in a position to say, not just, I want to get a recruiter. That's your first instinct. I want the closest person to the job possible. I would like to speak to a hiring manager, i.e., get an interview. That's essentially what he's saying, and I think that's essentially what people want. They want a shortcut to the person who is going to put them in a position to win when they decide to look for a job. But I would rather that people understand where the money kind of flows, whether it's a paid recruiter inside a company, a recruiter who's paid to put your resume in front of someone who could then make a hiring decision, and then they would get paid for that. But I think it's more healthy to think of a recruiter as one of the resources, one of the pieces in the toolbox you need, but know the different roles that recruiters take, and know that in this day and age, with the absolute avalanche of resumes that are coming from ZipRecruiter that you can have access to through LinkedIn Recruiter, through really Google, through Indeed, as an employer, you can get 1,000 resumes a day if you wanted to, sent to your inbox that supposedly have a lot of the criteria you're looking for. Does that mean you're going to get the most qualified candidates? No. But in general, recruiters, staffing, headhunters, if you want to call them that, independents, people working at companies are not having trouble finding resumes, finding necessarily people to look at or resumes to look at, then people to call or email or in-mail. They're not having a problem with that. So you trying to find one recruiter or a couple of recruiters who are going to do your bidding, do your job search for you, is not as healthy as someone who says, you know what, I'm open to someone who could assist me, put me in a position to win. I'm not going to depend on any one recruiter or even a hiring manager to do the work for me. I need to do a number of things before I even get started with talking with recruiters or staffing folks or conduits to the kind of jobs. I'm going to take it upon myself to prepare me for this search, to put me in a position to win. And I think that's the healthiest approach. And then you want to look for key connections at the company who may be in an influential place to refer you as an internal referral source, who may not be in the recruiting group or the HR group. Sometimes those people have to comply with, if you call them and made a connection and got a recruiter on the inside of, let's say, IBM, that person might be constrained to essentially tell you, I don't have the power to refer or recommend you right now. I don't mind connecting with you and talking with you, which is sometimes rare at most companies because people are busy, and they have enough resumes, but maybe they have some guidance. Maybe you could find someone who's a deep in connection through your alumni, through a warm connection. Maybe you could develop, and this is what we work on often, a relationship with key people in your industry who could warmly refer you to people who could influence recruiting, who could influence the hiring manager, who could be put in a position to win. That's the art of search that I think a lot of people who are in a hurry to leave their job or feel like they've just got to get the next job, who see a position online, or who know it's time to look for a job, they want to get a recruiter. They want to shortcut the system. They don't want to have to go through a lot of different channels to find the person who's going to refer them. But I will tell you, in my experience in 28 years, it is worth it to build out quickly.
What would you say are some good ways to ensure that you present yourself as a high-quality candidate to potential employers?
It takes, I think, a pretty sustained campaign-like effort to get not only a recruiter, but to get advocates, to get people who will really help you take your messaging, which should be more than just, I need a job, to the right people, and to find out how that environment works at the companies of your choice, and to sometimes find not just the Fortune 50 or the Fortune 100, but maybe there are companies that would fit your your needs, have great benefits, great pay that you don't know about, that you don't see clearly, that could put you in a position to win? And who are the people who could make warm introductions? How could you find out about the culture, the environment, how they work, how they think, what they do, who they like to hire in the kind of role that you're interested in, how they've gotten to know and how they've hired before. You start finding out about their ecosystem, the way they've vetted candidates, as you're called, as a prospective employee, how you need to be perceived via your brand as a candidate. Do you need to really polish up your LinkedIn, your resume, your messaging? Should you be girding yourself with education to support the kind of claim that you could make this career shift to this company? What are you doing right now that makes it look like you're an energetic, revenue-driving, cost-reducing asset to this potential company that you're interested in? That slows down the process. That isn't just getting someone that's, from a way back kind of mindset who's going to help you get a job because they're a recruiter and they just can't find enough resumes and they just don't know where to look to find people. You can't assume that today. You have to believe that there's lots of competition. Nobody's in a tough situation when it comes to just finding bodies or resumes, but they do want right fits. They want involved, interested, energetic people who fit their culture, fit what they're trying to do, can do whatever job that they're going to apply for. And a lot of times we believe that the job description, even that a recruiter or a hiring person might put out there or HR might post to the job sites, is maybe 70 to 80% of what the job really is. There's probably 20 to 30% at least that's a bit of a mystery because they've written it, and unless it's just a pure techie engineering straight up job, there may be other parts of it that they'd like to have that they're not talking about. And when you build relationships inside companies and build a number of connections who can give you insight into how that department, that kind of job, those kinds of roles really work and what you really do, that will give you more insight into what they really want when you interview, when you network, when you do these things. So that's my kind of breakdown about how to look at recruiters, look at them as one of the sources, not your sustaining complete meal. Look to creatively build relationships with people who will become your advocates. And there's an art to that. That's why, again, career coaches and career advisors and career strategists like us are involved, because that's the art of the search. It's not often, even though you'll hear exceptions to the rule, as easy as, find that one person who's going to do the work for you and on your behalf. It would be nice. You would like it to happen that way, but it's often harder than that. But I will say, building those relationships out, developing that kind of mindset, not resting on anyone to do the work that you need to do, the hard work of networking and developing your brand and creatively going about your search. If you will not delegate that to anyone or perceive people who may do that for you, you may be surprised that someone does go to bat for you. Someone does become your advocate. But give first, find ways to learn more, be curious, creatively continue and really up your branding and your activity and your interest and to show people at any age, at any level at your career that this is something you want to do. You would be a viable candidate if they chose you, and that journey is worth taking, even though you'd like to short circuit it, you'd like to get to the point quicker, kind of like that prospective client that came to my office who was just hoping to find, the key to the kingdom right in that situation. So those are my suggestions for today. I wish you all well.
Standing out is difficult. Don't simply rely on recruiters, but leverage relationships and create cheerleaders for yourself. What if you're on the other side of the table? How do you ensure that you make the right decisions when hiring?
What's your secret for hiring great people? What's the one question You absolutely have to ask candidates before you hire them.
That's John Hittler, transformational business coach at Evoking Genius.
Well, let's agree on a couple things. First of all, it's a tough hiring market. We're at all-time lows on unemployment. So talent is in short supply. Good talent is in short supply. Secondly, talent makes a huge difference. Just ask the best employers with the best teams. You gotta know how to source great people. Well, that said, let's also go with 2 defensive strategies before we reveal the one question. First defensive strategy, or safety strategy. Always hire for great cultural fits first. It's controversial. People say, I got to get the best talent. No, you got to get people that'll fit your culture and your team really well. No matter who you hire, you're going to have to do additional training, even if they're really talented. Then hire for commercial skills. Find the people with a great cultural fit, and then hire for the best skills you can. Here's the worst hire you could make. Someone with tremendous cultural skills who's a wreck in your culture. You're going to part ways on bad terms very quickly, and you're going to upset everyone else in your organization. So always hire for culture first, then for the best commercial skills you can get. So now on to the question. Here's the question. What was your first paid job? Really? That's the key question? Well, here's what it reveals. Here's why it's a good one. Work ethic is something you learn. You don't teach work ethic to adults. You learn that as early as you can in life. So when their first paid job, when they answer that question and say, well, my first paid job was, I used to shovel snow and cut grass of the people on our street. And when did you start that? I was probably 11 or 12 I started doing that. It's a fabulous answer. Here's why. It tells me that they understand what they would do for $10. It tells me they understand what they would do with $10. They have a work ethic, and they have an ambition that started at 10 or 11. Fabulous. Will you have to push them ever to get the work done? Nope. Will they have trouble with deadlines or with irresponsibility? Nope. They've been working since they were a kid. They understand a work ethic. So here's the 3 best guys or women you can hire when they answer this question. Anybody that had a paper route. Now those are going to be older employees. They're probably going to be over 40. Anybody that had a paper route, that's every single day, regardless of whether you feel like it, regardless of the weather, and regardless of what day of the week it is. Okay, great. Farm kids. Any kid that worked on a farm had probably an hour or 2 hours of quote-unquote chores before they went to school. And if you didn't feed the animals died. So again, you never got a day off, and those chores started probably at 5 or 6. They were age appropriate, but kids on farms start working at 5 or 6. They will never have a problem with a work ethic. And the last one is kids whose families had a family business, like a corner store or a restaurant. Those kids started working at the restaurant or the corner store early, even if they didn't get much of a paycheck. They didn't get a formal paycheck. They started working and maybe got some cash pay. They're fabulous hires because they learned the value of contribution and work ethic at an early age. Well, here's the second reason why it's a good question. The earlier the kids start, the earlier they learn ambition. Does this question help? I trust that you'll do well in hiring for culture first and for commercial talent second. Find out what their first paid job is, and you'll do really well. Until we meet again, all the best.
I'd like to thank the 2 Johns for their time and insights. It's a competitive job market, and it will take some out-of-the-box thinking to make a good impression. On the other side, with no shortage of applicants, asking questions that go beyond credentials and shine light on work ethic is one way to find your best candidates. That's all we have time for today. Be sure to subscribe to our show. As always, thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.